All right, everyone. Welcome to my talk. My name is Nathan South, and I'll be presenting my research and the stuff that I did during my internship for designing future human habitats on the moon and Mars with Jen Blank. It was an amazing internship, and I had a lot of fun. My internship was focused on conceptualizing Martian surface and subsurface habitats and living operations. So during the internship, the main objective was having understanding the concept of what would a colony or habitat of 100 people would look like. And so we used generative AI. We used a lot of different types of models. I mainly used Gemini to create images and iterate on concepts that would be important to kind of focus on for a habitat for 100 people. And during the presentation, you'll see the different types of future aspects that would it should be focused on. And we shared our information and what we generated each week with the cohort and had opportunities to speak with guest speakers who had subject matter expertise on these specific concepts. And so a lot of what you'll see is image and prompting. Wasn't able to show all my prompting. I had to kind of summarize a little bit because I had really in-depth conversations about what this would look like and how these images would be generated. And so our first ever kind of initial project was deciding whether we should investigate moon or Martian habitats. And I was curious to see what would be important to include in a habitat design. And so after speaking and having conversations with AI, having an understanding of power, whether it's solar panels or a fission reactor, or adding an EVA bay and having essential modules like a galley, a greenhouse, a community space, a research bay, a medical bay. That was kind of all the things that I incorporated to come up with my initial concepts. And so these were the two kind of concepts that I came up with. I decided that I wanted to look at both and kind of decide which one I wanted to kind of continue looking into. And I liked the moon, but I really wanted to investigate what Martian surface operations look like. And I'll go further into why I wanted to do that. But one big reason was I feel like the operations of dealing with the day-night cycles of a lunar base would be a little bit more complicated than a Martian surface, at least in regards to that context. But we'll move further with it. So after the initial concepts, we wanted to explore what robotics and automation would look like. And I came up with a couple of different ideas of how that would be applied in a Martian habitat. Obviously, I think it would be really important to have AI be integrated in navigation. So in rovers, having pathways that'll be highlighted for the crew to navigate so they would avoid dangerous areas. And also during EVA operations, having a utilitarian robot, maybe like a TARS from Interstellar or something like that, to kind of assist with mining and carrying heavier loads. And then, of course, not only outside the habitat, but inside the habitat as well, having this type of robotic and automation would be essential, especially helping with cooking and helping with the greenhouse and harvesting plants and also doing diagnostic treatment on patients or crew that may feel sick. I think it would be a lot easier to have a robot or automated system kind of help you get through that process before kind of seeing a doctor for a more serious issue. After the robotics and automation, we looked at community spaces. So, what would a space for a 100-person colony look like? And I initially started with a sketch because my first thought was for a 100-person colony, it would be a little bit difficult to kind of be able to interact and engage with everybody in the colony on a given day. So having a place where a colony or a bunch of people could come together and engage more organically would be the best thing to do. And so I centered this community space over designs from the 1970s of like living like conversation pits and then kind of building off from there, having elements for plants that can kind of help with psychology and kind of ease the mind a little bit, and as well as having recreational activities like a gym and yoga studio and tennis court, maybe. I thought that would be really fun to explore. And after the community space, we wanted to focus on personal space. So, what would it look like for a personal cabin? And my first idea was a lot of the ideas that I came up with were really based on sci-fi and books and movies that I read. So, I had the initial thought of, the alien spaceships, like from the movie Alien, having that real sleek, metallic kind of very basic, like everything you need is right there, and that's all you need. And you'll get your enrichment from outside your personal space in the rest of the habitat. And then I decided, maybe having something a little bit more enriching in a personal space would be interesting. So having a little area for exercising, a big window so you could see the landscape, a personal workspace, and even like a wake up morning station that has coffee and stuff like that. Um, Moving forward, so this was also part of the reason why I decided to look into Martian habitats was at the same time of this internship, I was engaged in the Deep Space Food Challenge that NASA was putting out and kind of having on the market from the past couple months, I think starting in January. And so the whole plan was to build and design a food production system for a Martian surface habitat. It wasn't for a 100-person colony, it was for a 15-person colony over about 500 days. And so a lot of the stuff that I built from that became inspiration for these AI images that I'm showing you right now. So aquaponics was a big component that I thought would be essential. Having animal-based protein would be great for the astronauts, and a very modularized and vertical kind of organization for this crop production. And so looking forward, this is actually my work that I did for the Deep Space Food Challenge. I called it MESA, the Modular Ecological Space Agricultural System. And so I built all this out of Blender using Claude to help me out. So this is what the full site layout would look like on the top left, having a kind of bicycle spoke, kind of geodesic dome kind of situation. And then those three kind of open faces were just able to let you see what was inside. And so in the three domes here, there was a grow house, a secondary grow house for sweet potatoes, and then a galley where you would cook, prep, and serve the food. Um, so it was a lot of fun. I had a good time with that. Moving forward with that, we wanted to see what would a medical bay look like? How would medical issues be treated in a 100-person colony? And so this one was a little bit scaled up for a larger population for 200 to 300 people. But I think having triage beds that would kind of flow into a robotic surgery suite, and then a pharmacy lab, and then having patient recovery modules in the end, was that flow was something that I thought was interesting and would be beneficial for the crew. And that the one on the left was the first initial design, and then I decided, maybe having more holistic elements and kind of having that geodesic dome kind of fit that consistent aesthetic that I had for my initial concepts. After this, we were looking at modes of transport. So what would it look like for having crew go back and forth between either mining locations or even other areas? Maybe there's another habitat that we have that we kind of outpost that we set up. And obviously, I thought there would be wheeled craft like ATVs and rovers, but I thought it was also interesting of maybe a walker type of vehicle that would help navigate through difficult terrain, or even more terrain that's steeper that traditional wheeled vehicle could not move through. And then obviously, I thought a quadricopter vehicle could be important, especially with handling larger cargo and maybe doing quicker transportation to and from different outposts or mining operations. Clothing was the next kind of idea that we explored. And a lot of my inspiration came from, I love fashion. That's a big thing for me. And so after hearing that Prada was involved in designing the what the outfits and spacesuits for the astronauts, I kind of went with that. And that was kind of the big aesthetic that kind of was centered in my designs for clothing production. And I thought it was important to have an outfit for each position or a job. to help not only fit with workplace identity, as well as kind of be able to identify, what you kind of do around the habitat. So from, engineering to flight operations to agriculture to medical to even like administrative roles or even athletic or recreational workwear. That was the ideas that I came up with. And one other idea that I came up with, because I was very in the mind of having a closed loop system, because it would be difficult to have dealing with waste, especially with old clothes that you don't want to deal with. Coming up with a fabricator that could be able to, you could throw your clothes into it, it would churn it all up, and then it would synthesize brand new clothes for the crew. And yeah, dressing in context, that was the big theme that I had in my mind. And then going off of that, of the workforce having their own outfit, we explored what would the distribution of occupations would look like in these habitats. And so we were able to talk to a couple people. Pascal Lee was one person that we talked to who had a lot of good information. He has visited McMurdo Station and worked there for a period of time. And so he was able to give a lot of advice about what that job distribution will look like. And it was really interesting. He said that a lot of it was mainly logistics, and maybe 20% were actual grantees or researchers. And so that's what really kind of fueled the distribution of my workforce, having a percentage of only 20% being mission scientists and everyone else kind of working at keeping the habitat kind of working and in full operation. And so on the left kind of shows the cutaway of all the different people working in these habitats. So after also talking with a few other people, Kevin Cannon and a couple other people who are in space architecture, I came to my final design, integrating all these concepts that we were exploring into a single base. And so I decided to move from subsurface to surface operations and having regular sandbags stacked up to help mitigate and deal with radiation rather than being underground was the idea of what I wanted to look into. So this is the work that I did. This is everything that I did the past couple months, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, please ask now.